Hello everyone, welcome to THLGK. In the last video, I talked about the two approaches to religion that I consider to be honest and respectable, and how the tension between them will generate a third approach that I call the Abominable Approach. To summarize what I talked in the last video, on one hand, we have the literalist approach. As the name suggests, is the approach that takes the sacred text as literal, as reality, as truth. It's an approach that's very straightforward, because all it's required is the sacred text in front of them. That's it. Everything that's contained in the sacred text is real. It happened. It's historical. The true literalist does not question the sacred text. To them, the sacred text is. Everything else doesn't matter. Everything else is an invention. Everything else is the work of evil forces, and so on. So it doesn't seem, that's a belief I have, that there are any literalists around, because it requires the acceptance of both the good and the bad, the common sense and the crazy, everything. You have to simply bow to the sacred text. And content aside, the contents of the sacred text aside, that's what makes it honest and respectable, because it's a reality outside of the individual, outside of a group. It doesn't matter what a person or a religion says. The sacred text is the ultimate foundation of the approach. On the other hand, we have what I call the scientific approach. And again, as the name suggests, is an approach that applies scientific methodology to the sacred text. I'm keeping it simple because it's a sacred text, religion, myths, and so on, but we are focusing on the sacred text because, like it or not, most religions pretend the sacred text is the core of the religious system. So the religious system usually is built out of the sacred text. But that doesn't matter for now. What matters is, once you apply scientific methodology, which is objective in itself, to the sacred text, once again, the result will not cater to what you want or what you expect. The result is the result of the application of the methodology, be it what it may. And that was what happened historically. Religious people, priests, pastors, theologians, scholars, in the 15th, 16th century, and since then, they applied the scientific methodology to the sacred text, trying to prove the religious claims real, trying to prove what the text was telling real, as reality, as truth, as factual, something that happened. However, the results did not match their expectations. And what the scientific approach revealed is that those who take it seriously will become atheists, because the scientific approach deconstructs and destroys all religion, or I should say all religions, and all the gods we know. And now we have these two opposite and in opposition approaches that are creating tension, and in that tension is where the abominable approach is born. And the abominable approach is the other name for what most people understand as religion, because the abominable approach is religion itself. All religion operates within the abominable approach. So we probably used interchangeably the abominable approach and religious approach. And with that, let's now dive with a bit more detail on the abominable approach. Well, the abominable approach has as a core subjectiveness, and that's why I don't consider it an honest or respectable approach to religion, even though it's religion itself. Because by being subjective, the abominable approach, the religious approach, needs as a requirement to be dishonest and manipulative as a general rule, and at best rely on ignorance. And here is not name calling, it is relying on the fact that people don't know, so you don't instruct them. They remain ignorant from the facts that would contradict, that would oppose the approach itself, religion itself. That's why within this approach I see two distinct groups of people, what I call the aware and what I call the unaware. The unaware are those people who think they are following the truth. They are ignorant of reality. They are the ones being deceived and being manipulated. So they are ignorant because they don't even know something exists. They are kept in ignorance, in not knowing. Because they are trained, usually, to transfer their judgment and put that trust on religious leadership, scholars, theologians, what I call generally as religious operatives. Those are the aware. They know the reality, for instance, of the current study of the Bible in a Christian perspective. So, being generous, they are either choosing to ignore and not teach this knowledge because they fear the consequences of the scientific approach. See, they treat their audiences like children, and this is something they shouldn't know. This is too dangerous a knowledge for them to know. This can lead them to atheism. This sort of thinking. Or, and this is my opinion, the bulk of the aware are the religious operatives who choose to manipulate and deceive, and this is actively, for private or institutional gains, benefits, and to fulfill the true purpose of religion, social control. There might be a third group, which is really interesting. They are those people who having come in contact with a scientific approach, choose to bury their heads and pretend they are unaware of the reality. It's a sort of denying the reality they've come in contact with because they consider it, for instance, too empty, right? You lost that security of a divine being watching over you. So in their personal lives, they prefer to don't take the last step needed to fully embrace the scientific approach. And this happens a lot with theologians, by the way. It could be the result of decades of manipulations they've been exposed to, because even the religious operatives of today, they tend to have been manipulated at some point in their lives. And the cycle is very vicious because it's very difficult for us, given long enough amount of time, to recognize we've been subscribing to something that's wrong. You see that with scientists as well. A lot of scientists tend to not be open to certain new information that contradicts what they have believed their entire lives, because then the entire lives in the sense of knowledge or knowledge construction comes crumbling down. So they prefer to double down, even though there is a tendency within the scientific reality that usually tends towards the destruction and reconstruction of the knowledge. So, to help visualize this emergence of the abominable approach of religion itself, I made a small graph that I'll now describe. So, one side you have the literalist approach. Imagine the literalist approach as 100% the sacred text. Those subscribing to the literalist approach are subscribing to must subscribe to 100% of the sacred text says. And on the other side, the scientific approach. This is a bit more complex. I put in the graph under scientific approach 0%, but it's not that the scientific approach doesn't subscribe to everything the text says, in the sense that it doesn't reject everything. It's 0% taking the text at face value. While for the literalist approach, everything is true, everything is real. For the scientific approach, no, it's 0% that. Things contained in the sacred text might be true, they might be real, but we need to investigate. But for the purposes of the illustration, this is what the 0% means. And as I said, I don't believe there's a single literalist, because no one believes 100% of what the sacred text says. Most fundamentalists are probably around 90%. Right? There, I would say where the fundamentalists are. Let me add this here. which are those groups that tend to tend to say they are following the Bible, they are following the Word of God. So most of them are probably around here, around 90%. Around 50% we probably have the Catholic Church. And that's where I put the Catholic Church, probably here, somewhere around 50%, because the Catholic Church relies heavily on the tradition. The sacred text is a part of the tradition, but the tradition is much more than the sacred text. And then we have here, at around 99%, those people who, coming really close to fully adopting the scientific approach, can't take the last step, can't accept reality as is. As an example, and then if you are interested, you can search. We'll talk about them in the future. You have deists and negative theologians. Those are probably around 99%. The deists, for instance, they reject most of the sacred text, but they still keep the idea of God as a reality. And what's interesting about this little graph is this: the moment you abandon the literalist approach, you have to justify why you are doing it. And nowadays, before they could use force to justify it. So imagine this. Imagine the Christian church changed something about Jesus. If you raise your hand, well, but didn't you say this just a few years ago that's completely in opposition to what you said? The priest would just look to the soldier go, whoop, a little sword in the gut. Anyone else want to question? No? We are good. Of course I'm being a bit extreme here, but you get the idea. They could use force to enforce their position. Now they can't. So what they do is, to justify abandoning a part of the literalist approach, which again, they have no criteria to. They've lost the objective criteria of the sacred text. Now that they can't claim anymore that the sacred text is fully real, because they are going in opposition to something that's written in it. So what they have to do is they have to make use of manipulation and deceit to try to veer people away from the godless reality of the scientific approach, while using the scientific approach to justify why they are removing aspects of the sacred text. Because the sacred texts, as we have today, are problematic. Many passages at a basic human level, making the acceptance in today's society completely difficult, if not impossible. So you have this rise of an abominable patchwork of ideas from both sides they have to try and use to justify their positions. So, to religion, and again, which is the Abominable Approach, the sacred text is no longer the foundation. It's a tool. It's a tool they use to pretend they are literalists. And to that, once again, they must deceive, they must lie, they must manipulate to make people accept what they are saying. And this whole thing is a problem because the truth, reality, God, the gods, are whatever the individual or institution say it is. They don't have anything in which they must to bow anymore. There is no longer an external foundation to keep them in check. Anyone can now determine what is true and what's real, what's the word of God, what's the will of God, because it's the individual or a group, an institution, that determine what it is. And what it is what they want to be. They want something to be true and real, they make that something true and real. They don't want something true or real anymore because it makes people recoil against their religion, then they remove it. And they use, in most cases, the scientific approach to try and justify that removal. That's why, if you Google World Religious Tree and search images, you will see they are usually very incredible designs of religions branching out of each other. And that can be right. But imagine you have so many religions, in Christianity itself, so many sects, churches, denominations, that in many aspects take completely opposite positions from each other, and all the while claiming they are following the sacred text. That's impossible. But why does that happen? Because anyone can choose whatever they want to keep and whatever they want to discard. The individuals are now the judges of reality. But since they still need, religion still needs the sacred text, something outside of themselves, to justify their doctrines, they pretend the sacred text has some importance. And they use, once again, of manipulation so people follow them. That's why you can have people here really close to the literalist approach. They might accept 99% of the Bible, for instance. But the 1% makes all the difference. Because they have to find a reason to justify it. And here's the interesting part. The 1% doesn't stay at 1%. because you can search this on Google. Google Bible hyperlink, and it usually shows also some nice pictures of the interconnection of the biblical texts. So the 1% the person is taking away, for instance, let's say slavery, might be connected to something else, and that is connected to something else, and is connected to something else. So the moment you get rid of 1%, you are not getting rid of just that. You are getting rid of everything connected to that. And on the other hand, you have people here, 99%. A lot of scholars are over there. They discard most things from religion, from the sacred text. They get really close to fully adhering to the scientific approach. But they can't live in a world without God. So it's very funny to watch. They basically contort themselves, their ideas, to having removed everything from religion, everything from the sacred text, saying that those are inventions, those are myths, those have political meanings, it's for social control. They adopt 99% of what the scientific approach postulates, or has reached the conclusion, right? Because the scientific approach, because I'm talking basically from a point where we've had 600 years of research. That's why I make these claims. But it's always a claim from the end towards the beginning, if that clarifies something. The scientific approach claims after it concludes, never before. Before, everything are hypotheses, everything are in the open, everything are questionable. And in the process, a lot of things at the end, where we are standing today, are still open. But that's the idea. And those people, those highly intelligent people, know all this. But they can't live in a world without God. And that's their right, and that's your right. Well, I think this one is a pretty big episode. Let me try and sum it up. All right, summarize it. The true approach problem is the creation of the abominable approach, the religious approach, because it's the approach every religion engages in. The two approaches, the scientific and the literalist, they are honest and respectable because their foundation lies outside of the individuals. They are objective. So, be the sacred text or the scientific methodology, we must submit to something outside of ourselves and accept the consequences and results that will come from it. While the literalist approach must grapple with the fact that many stories and behaviors in the sacred text are disgusting to us today, still, if you want to believe, if you want to be a literalist and remain honest you must accept all that. Scientific approach, on the other hand, will lead to atheism. That's not because it was made this way. It is simply the result of the multiple research projects on the subject. But that's not how most people engage with religion. Most people are in the realm of the abominable approach, of the religious approach. Many of them without even knowing. We tend to be brought up by people we trust, our parents, our communities, and they themselves grew up believing that they were following the truth and reality. But unfortunately, it's all a game of deceit and manipulation to fulfill religion's true objective: social control. That's why I consider this approach abominable. On a personal note, and I will close the episode with this, a part of me wanted to be real. I mean, I think it's really cool, this world of gods, or even one god, but God is much more interesting, like these mythical creatures, these forces of good versus evil, supernatural powers, angels and demons. I mean, come on, it's really cool. Not to mention the psychological safety of the idea of the afterlife. Life after death, meeting the people you loved, getting to live for eternity with those you love. Come on. It's so cool. It's so interesting. Unfortunately, there's no evidence for it. Not only that, all the religions, to propagate their teachings, to keep people in their midst, being part of their institutions, they manipulate and deceive us. They demand us to suspend disbelief. That's because they no longer have power, because when they did, they could kill us. They demand that we accept everything they say without a grain of evidence, while always demanding something from us, be it money or obedience, to be good little lambs and live our lives following their rules. Rules, by the way, they change whenever they want. That's it, everyone. Whew. This might have been the longest episode so far. I'd like to thank you all for mostly listening to it. I put some images and a little graph I made up, and if you want to check it out, But I mostly describe them, so not like you'll be losing anything. But this brings to a conclusion this whole concept I have on how people approach religion, and I hope you got something out of it. As always, I might not say every time, and sometimes I get a little bit, how can I say that? I imagine as trigger happy, shooting at all sides, but always have this in mind. I will always support whatever you want to believe, as long as you don't try to impose on anyone else. Not only that, everything I say based on the moment I'm saying it, having thought about it for quite a while. But there's always the possibility I'm wrong or that I make a mistake. So if you found something interesting, if you heard something I said and say, oh, that's interesting, that's true, don't repeat. Look it up. Investigate for yourself. See, check it out to see if I was really on point, if I hit the target, or if I missed it. And with that said, I hope you guys have a great time, and I see you all next time. Well, I did not say, I should have said, right? If you like, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, checking my other social media. I'm using X now because they are allowing the article feature to create articles as sort of a companion to the episode. So if you can, check them out. And that's it. Now, truly and once again, I'll see you all next time.